romance, crypto, and organized con. How he lost everything. The romance scam that funds crime syndicates. Love bombed, crypto trapped, pig butchered. Welcome to RomConned, where love and true crime collide. I'm Laurel House, dating and relationship expert, joined by my co-host, criminologist, Dr. Alex Del Carmen. Today's episode exposes one of the fastest growing tech-enabled romance scams on the planet, a con that blends emotional grooming with financial slaughter. It's called pig butchering, and no one is safe from it.
This isn't a petty scam. These organizations are run like global business enterprises. Scripts, training systems, quotas, psychological targeting, and even human trafficking behind the scenes. Romance is not the goal. Control is.
A viewer, Mark, was scammed. He reached out and asked that I tell his story for him. This is what it is. Mark was a recently divorced 52-year-old software consultant from Texas, lonely, hopeful, and new to dating apps. That's where he met Bella. She was elegant, kind, curious, a widowed boutique owner who understood pain and rebuilding. She didn't flirt aggressively. Instead, she bonded emotionally. She said, "Our success will be built together." After a few weeks, she encouraged him to start investing for their future. She even sent screenshots of her trading page, making thousands a day. Bella told him, "Just start small. I'll teach you. You deserve real wealth." So he invested $3,000. It doubled overnight, then $20,000, then $50,000. Within 3 months, Mark made $218,000. But when he tried to withdraw the money, the platform froze. They demanded taxes up front, the transfer fees, then legal clearances. Bella disappeared. So did the money. Both, Mark discovered, were never real.
This is not romance. It is a structured pipeline of emotional exploitation that drives victims into fraudulent financial ecosystems that are often controlled by criminal syndicates.
Scammers fatten the emotional bond first, then slaughter financially. They are targeting the lonely or transitioning, going through divorce, loss, isolation, economic stress. Today, we're joined by cybersecurity expert John Wilson, Senior Fellow of Threat Research at Fortra. John has helped take down major international cybercrime networks, including the B-54 Citadel botnet with Microsoft and FSISAC. He's a Forbes contributor and an industry leader in exposing identity theft, sextortion, and the fastest rising romance scam today, pig butchering. He's here to help us understand how criminals weaponize technology and how we can protect ourselves. John, pig butchering uses love as bait, but organized fraud as the hook. From a cybersecurity angle, what makes these scams so effective?
Hi, Laurel. Thanks for having me on today. Really, it's all about social engineering. From a technology standpoint, it's a relatively low-tech scam. They do have to assemble a website that looks like a legitimate crypto trading platform. But once they have one of these, they clone it. And we see these popping up on dozens, if not hundreds of different domain names every single day. So when one gets shut down, a new one pops up, but it's literally just a clone of one of the other sites.
What does that actually mean for the consumer language who this is just totally beyond them?
So look at it this way. If you want to trade stocks, you're going to go to Charles Schwab or you're going to go to E-Trade, or you're going to go to a platform that does that. There are other platforms that specialize in cryptocurrency investing, things like Binance. And, there's a number of other ones out there. The problem is these are not necessarily household names. So obviously, if you're investing in stocks, you've heard of E-Trade, you've heard of Charles Schwab, you've heard of Morgan Stanley and some of the other big folks. But these crypto places, typically folks haven't heard of them. And so a domain name is simply the address that you go to. So when I go to E-Trade, I type in, etrade.com into my web browser. When you go to one of these sites, you type in some random name, crypto blah, blah, blah .top or crypto blah, blah, blah .xyz or crypto whatever.com. And again, they just have thousands and thousands and thousands of different names. They register all of these names. And one of the things that happens is when law enforcement realizes, oh, hey, this is a malicious site. And if they're able to get it shut down, well, the scammer just simply takes a different name that they have in the backlog and they point it over here. And then they update all their victims and say, oh, by the way, we've got a new website. Come to our new address. And so this is a way that they can achieve that persistence and keep their presence up there, even though law enforcement is out there knocking these sites offline.
Let's talk about Mark and Bella and what happened with Mark. Dr. Alex, tell me your opinion about this.
They're going to be looking for these particular scammers is the vulnerability that somebody is in. And we kind of talked a little bit about it when you did your intro about how people may be going through a divorce. The bottom line is they're looking for somebody that is distracted, somebody that is emotionally dependent, that is looking for a break. It's that moment in all of our lives when you get to a point, and of course, life is just this way, right? Sometimes that you go through several months or maybe even years where things just don't seem to go right. And that person is dying for a break, dying for a financial break, dying for something that's going to just sort of break that pattern of bad news after bad news after bad news, especially economically. And so, as John points out, what they're looking for is they're looking for that opportunity where they're going to come in and basically make it so real to you that you are going to feel that, boy, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. This is the break that I want. And they're going to show you numbers, kind of to your point earlier, right? They're going to show you at least some preliminary numbers that look great. They look fantastic. I mean, boy, I'm making money. And if I keep this up, some people, I've seen this before where some people pick up their calculators and they start sort of multiplying the number of times that I can have this type of a break and I'll retire in 6 months.
Right.
And then the fantasy comes in, right? It kind of reminds me of what my dad used to say to me all the time when he used to buy the lottery, right? Every week. And I used to say to him, Dad, why are you buying the lottery? I teach statistics, right? I can tell you right now, you're never going to win it. And you know what he used to say to me? He used to say, Alex, I don't care. But the bottom line is it gives me a week to talk about something else other than. And I thought, that's exactly what happens among folks that sort of have that hope, right? They're hoping for something, for a break, and they just, unfortunately, they get scammed.
And it's a quick break, like the lottery. Very quickly, you're seeing money. And on top of the money, though, is the romance. One of the things that Dr. Alex, you and I always talk about is that every single con begins with trust. It is, I trusted this person. I opened my heart to them. And because of that, they're not going to scam me. Why would they do that? I believe the good in everybody because I am a good person. Well, that's what scammers are looking for, the good people. And they are going to exploit the trust. And that's the danger of it.
Well, there's that famous saying that says, show me the money. Well, people are just waiting to be shown the money, right? Show me the money, show me evidence. And we tell people, by the way, trust and verify, right? Always make sure that there's a sign that shows that the money is, that this person is real, that this person is really, truly making money for you or giving you their affection and their love. But see, we never tell people how long they should trust people for initially. Right. We only tell them to trust, to make sure that you put them through the test or through a test.
Right.
Well, that test could be a week. That test could be a couple of days. Not only a test of the heart.
It could be one conversation where you're both opening up emotionally. And, well, he told me or she told me about her mother's passing or her partner's death or her shame, her insecurities. So obviously, we have passed that threshold of trust and now we trust. And that's the danger of it. So John, from your perspective, what can people do in terms of verifying that truth, right? Like they show you a piece of paper, I've doubled my money in 2 days. Well, what can I actually do to have an understanding of what's happening with my money?
Yeah, so the challenge here is that for me as a technical person, it's very easy. The first thing I would do is say, well, when was this website registered? Who is this website registered to? Can I connect this website through DNS entries, which is like the kind of the phone book of the internet? Can I connect that to other sites that are well respected, well known? Your average person doesn't have this capability. So I think one of the things you have to do is punch in the name of the site and the word scam into Google or into
Uh-huh.
Bing or your favorite search engine. You do a search on it with the word scam. And when you suddenly see 53 entries come up, I think you'll quickly recognize, like, whoops, okay, that's probably not a good one. And I recommend this in a lot of different things. Any sort of odd thing that happens, simply type in what happened in the word scam. And, if you don't get any hits back, there's a good chance maybe it's legitimate. But when you see the whole first page of entries is nothing but people talking about the scam, well, there's your answer right there.
What other things would you say that you should practice this with?
Well, certainly romance, right? Romance scams, that is a little bit different. I think, and I'm sure you've discussed this in the past, but you need to have a conversation with the person, not just text, right? Other things, if you're at work and you get an email that says, hey, this is the CEO and I need you to do me a favor. I need you to run up to the store and buy gift cards. Okay. Well, first of all, I can tell you immediately that's a scam. It's a very common scam. But what I always tell people is to verify through a second channel. What does that mean? Well, if it's the CEO allegedly contacting you, don't type back onto the email and hit reply and say, hey, is this really you? Of course it's going to be the scammer. They're going to reply back. Instead, pick up the phone, get on Teams, get on Slack, get on, your own internal communications, something different, a different channel, and a channel that you control. If you get an email from your bank saying that, oh, hey, we had to update our policies and we need you to click here and update your password. Well, it's very tempting to just click that button, but you're going to end up at a phishing page. Instead, go type in the name of your bank, their website directly. If you get something about a charge that's made to your credit card and there's a phone number there to call, don't call that phone number. Look at the back of your card. Call the number on the back of your card, something that they
Right.
fake.
Yes. So you've said that scammers use scripts like customer service reps.
Absolutely.
What do those playbooks actually look like?
Yeah. So I've seen them for romance scams. The romance scams are typically done that's a very much a West African thing. And those scripts are always, here's how you reach out. Here's how you target people. You want to sort of start with sort of these initial things, just kind of agree with whatever the person says. The scripts for pig butchering are different and they're done by different groups of people. As you probably are aware, it is a scam that is typically run out of Southeast Asia. They're typically done by transnational Chinese criminal organizations, and there is human trafficking involved. They literally go and they offer people these wonderful jobs, work overseas for 3 months and get to see the world and make more money than you'll ever make in your village in China. And next thing you know, you're sitting in a sweatshop in Cambodia, locked in, forced to scam people 24/7. They confiscate their passports. So the scripts, it's interesting. There are a number of different channels that they come in on. One, of course, are the dating sites. The dating sites, they know that the people on there are looking for love. They're looking for companionship. And so they've already sort of self-filtered a little bit by virtue of being on those sites. They have one set of scripts for those. I'm sure every one of your viewers has probably gotten a text that said something like, hey, are we on for golf this Thursday? And you're like,
I got one this
oh,
morning.
exactly. Yeah. I get one, hey, can I still bring my horse by to be groomed tomorrow? And the first time you ever receive one of these, you might think to yourself, like, man, somebody must have gotten the wrong number. Well, let me correct it. And you reply to them, well, that's another in that they have. The script there, from there, will proceed to, oh, I'm so sorry. Isn't this Joe the horse groomer or whatever? No, sorry, it's not Joe the horse groomer. Oh, hi, my name is so-and-so. And then they like to send a picture of themselves. And it's usually a young, attractive Asian female, tends to be sort of the persona that I've seen used. I imagine they might use a different persona if they were, contacting someone that they know as a woman. First of all, how do they have our phone numbers? Well, guess
right.
Every time you read about a data breach, all our information's out there. They know everything about us, name, address, phone number, email addresses. It's all tied together. Don't kid yourself for a second thinking they found your number at random. They're going off of a list. And if you respond to even one of those texts, you immediately get a little check mark next to you somewhere that says, okay, this person's gullible enough to at least respond to text number 1. Maybe this time won't work. But, you're going to get hit 20, 30, 40 more times.
Just totally ignore it. Don't correct it.
Absolutely.
Ignore, report, block.
Yeah, exactly. Report, spam, and block. If you are, if you're on an iPhone, that's super easy. On some other platforms, you can just forward it to spam. I think it's 726 is the 4-digit code, and your carrier will go and that'll go into a queue, and ultimately they'll block that number and protect other people from getting that number. Now, of course, they'll just spend
There's so many more numbers.
the number. Yeah, exactly. There was a bust recently. They found, just like a whole truckload of like SIMs. So, and every one of them could basically act as his own phone number. But yeah, I would say that the government of some of these places are certainly, if not directly in on it, certainly government officials are taking bribes to look the other way. This is very often the case. We see this in Nigeria all the time, right? When you think Nigeria, depending on your point of view, you either think scams or you think oil. Does it mean the Nigerian government is supporting romance scams? No, of course not. But there's plenty of government officials that just look the other way. How is it that this unemployed guy is driving a brand new Mercedes when the average annual salary in Nigeria is about $6,500? That's for a whole year. That's not per month. And so when you go to places like Burma, you go to places like Laos, you go to places like Cambodia, well, the government themselves may not be in on it. You're absolutely going to find plenty of folks that are looking the other way, like as these massive buildings are going up in the middle of nowhere and piping in the fastest internet connectivity and piping in, plenty of electricity. Really, honestly, what are they doing there? There's only one logical thing that you could draw from that.
So this is literally buildings are going up and they are creating campuses
Exactly. Dormitories right adjacent to call centers. Yeah.
Okay. And this is where the human trafficking comes in.
He seems perfect, but something feels off and I can't put my finger on it. Okay, have you verified anything he's told you? Well, no, but can't I just believe him? Wanting to believe is idealistic, and it opens you up potentially for getting RomConned. Before you invest your heart, verify that what he says is correct. A quick background check on Truthfinder can tell you if he is who he says he is. So I don't have to guess? Exactly. Trust is earned. Truthfinder helps you verify before you get hurt.
I mean, one might think then that some of these people who are scamming you might also have a conscience and might feel bad about it and not take it to that next level. What are you seeing when it comes to romance scamming and financial scamming? Are they always linked here when it comes to pig butchering?
So there are some fundamental differences. I would say, so with romance scamming, the people doing the scamming are the scammers themselves. They're not being trafficked. They're doing it directly to help their bottom line. The folks that are working in these call centers doing the scamming, they are there against their will typically, and they've literally had their passport confiscated. They're forced to live in a dormitory. They're barely given, the bare essentials. They were promised great things, and they're in a situation where they can't do anything. And not only that, if they escape, what are they going to escape to? They're in the middle of a jungle somewhere. They don't speak the local language. How are they going to get back home? They don't have their passport. And additionally, I have heard stories, now I can't verify any of these, but I've heard stories that sometimes their family members will be threatened back home. And so there's that aspect too. You would think, well, why wouldn't somebody just when they send the text say, help, I'm stuck somewhere in the jungle, I'm being forced to do this? Well, because their communications are being monitored and they've had threats made against them.
So if social media can be faked, if ID photos can be stolen, if conversations can be faked, if voices can be faked, if video can be faked, what can be verified?
Yeah, I guess it simply comes down to this. If some new brick building showed up on the corner and they put up a sign that was written in crayon that said, First National Bank of whatever town you're in, you probably wouldn't go in and deposit your life savings there, right? And in much the same way, I came from a very small hometown. Most of the folks there have an account at the local credit union because that's the bank they knew and grew up with. Their parents had an account there. Their grandparents had an account there. When I went off to college, at the time, there was a bank called Bay Banks in the Boston area, and there was one on every corner. And I figured, well, that's probably where I should go get an account, right? So in much the same way, I think if you want to invest in crypto, that's not to say you can't invest in crypto, but do a little research, do it through the right thing, Don't take your advice from somebody that you met a day ago, a week ago, or even 3 months ago, who you've never once met in person, who you've only had communications with over text or WhatsApp or through a dating app. You really have to put this all into context. And I've even seen sadder cases. I had a case back in my hometown. My cousin reached out and said, "Hey, I've got this friend who insists she's making all this money on crypto." And I said, "It's a scam and she's going to get ripped off." And my cousin says, "But I'm thinking about doing it. She's showing me like how much money she's making. I can see it. She logs into her account." And I said, "Look, I can put up a website that can say anything. Like literally it's dots on a page. You have to remember that I can make it look like I have $1 trillion in my bank account. Doesn't mean I can go cash a check for $1 trillion." So she tried to get her friend to kind of see the light. But this is where we get into that sort of, and we see it a lot with romance scam victims as well. That embarrassment. You don't want to admit that you've been duped. It's highly emotional because number one, you've built up an emotional contact. And by now you've probably bragged to some of your real world friends, "Hey, you wouldn't believe it. I'm making all this money." You're excited. You want to tell people, "Hey, I've made a new friend and I got my life together. I've doubled my money in the space of a month." And nobody wants that bubble to be popped.
So let's talk about Mark and his story, because I feel like when for people who are listening, having that real story of this happened to someone. Mark reached out because he wants to feel, as you said, less ashamed, less alone, and that's something that we tend to give people. Dr. Alex, what would you say to Mark?
Well, lesson learned, right? In the sense that unfortunately there is a price to wisdom and there is a price to experience. And John kind of alluded to that earlier. What's really sad is before I would tell Mark, I'll give him any kind of advice, I would first of all say, you learn once, apply what you've learned so you're not re-victimized.
Right.
And you would be amazed, Laurel, that the number of people, I know John knows this well, that fall prey to these scammers not once, but several times. Because they come in different forms. And when you learn a technique and you learn that, they're doing X, Y, and Z, and then you get that one maybe call or email or a text, you're like, well, it didn't happen this way last time. And plus it's been many years ago. So clearly I can go ahead and do that. Now, I will throw something at John that I want to see if John joins me in giving some advice to Mark. Would you advise Mark, John, in using AI as a tool in order to figure out if the email address or the URL or the source is in fact a scam? And I'll preface my question by saying that I've been trying that lately just for kicks. We criminologists love to do this every once in a while, to just think like the other person, like the deviant individual, and figure out what are they thinking and how would they be thinking. And
how can we reverse it on them?
Right. And I'm not going to tell you which platform I used in terms of artificial intelligence, but I did use two different sources. And I noticed that about 80% of the time, they were spot on. So what do you think about that, about using AI as a tool for those of us that could be victims? To ask AI, does this sound like a scam? Can you do a deep search or a deep dive into this particular language, or to dissect the language? I even asked it, and don't laugh here, but I even said, give me a sense of the tone in terms of credibility. Give me a sense of the language patterns. Almost like if you're speaking to somebody that is a PhD in something related to languages, right? That could actually break down the words and the adjectives and the verbs, pronunciations. Oftentimes, as you know, these are translated into English from a foreign language. So, and it's given me wonderful charts and tables. And I tell you, 85% of the time, it's right.
Yeah, I think that is a very valid approach. It's similar to what I had suggested on, take whatever's happening, add the word scam and do a search for it. AI can basically go and search the entire internet, compile everything, find the nuances in the language, the conversation, et cetera. And chances are, yes, AI is going to be able to say with a high degree of certainty that this is very likely to be a scam. And the particular type of scam is pig butchering. And here are some references where you can learn how the scam works. So in that respect, AI is helpful. The question is, though, who are you going to believe? Some AI chatbot or this person that you've formed a friendship or romance with over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 weeks that you've poured your soul out to, and you feel that they've done the same to you. So that's, I think, one of the challenges is even when faced with the actual facts, I
Right.
can't take the money out. They won't let me take the money out. In the back of their head, it's what I call kind of the gambler's fallacy, right? If I'm in Vegas, it's 2 a.m. and I'm down $5,000. Well, I can go to bed, but guess what? If I go to bed, I lost $5,000. But
Right.
I play another hand or two, I could
I
win.
may win.
The difference is in Vegas, there at least is a non-zero chance I could win the money back. In any of these scams, or be it a romance scam or pig butchering, the chance is absolutely zero that you will get the money back.
I think that's so interesting in terms of being targeted twice, which you mentioned, right? Because they're targeting me twice, but this feels different. It's not the same as last time.
Yep.
Right. Because the first time you were targeted and scammed by the scammer. The second time you were targeted and scammed by the fake recovery experts who are also scammers. So it's a different tactic. It's a different style.
Who got your information from the first scammer says, hey, I took this person for, 150 grand or whatever the amount may be.
Right.
Now the person reaches out and they usually claim to be with the United Nations. They're with the FBI, Interpol, and they'll reference an article. For example, there was a big scam center takedown I was reading. It was mid-October of 2025. $15 billion in crypto was seized. That was the proceeds of some of these things, seized by the U.S. government. So they'll include a link to that story and say, yeah, I'm part of the team that's trying to find the victims so we can get them their money back. Nobody's going to get your money back. Okay. And this is one of those situations. Great. You get an email from quote unquote the FBI. Go do a search. Where's my local FBI office? Find the phone number, call it, ask them about it. They're going to say, much as I would love to get you your money back, there's nothing we can do. Please go to ic3.gov and file a complaint on the Internet Criminal Complaint Center. And this is where we get the stats. By the way, just so you know, up until 2021, every single year, the top scam that the FBI would report on the IC3 report was business email compromise. This changed in 2022, where for the first time, pig butchering made the number one spot. Losses in 2024, which is the last full year they have stats for, pig butchering, the losses were about $6.5 billion with a B dollars. Business email compromise was about $2.8 billion. And romance scams, by the way, were $672 million.
Romance scams are now $1.3 billion.
Oh my goodness. So see, that's gone up even since.
Yeah.
And I would argue that I believe the pig butchering and the romance scams are grossly underreported for the reasons previously cited. There's an embarrassment there. You feel that, I've been made a fool of, my heart has been broken, my wallet has been broken, and I just don't want to admit what's happened.
Well, and the other factor too is that some people don't believe that they're going to get their money back. So why even report it, right?
Right.
We know, for instance, in criminology, criminology 101, when you first, start sort of being shaped and becoming a criminologist, the first thing they teach you is, we call it the hidden picture of crime, which is essentially that about 85 to 90% of the crime in general that takes place in the United States is never reported or recorded. And so think about what that means in the context of, to your point, John, and to your point, Laurel. I mean, think about what that means in the context of how many thousands and thousands of people, go unnoticed, right? And that's part of the problem is, if they reported it, if people would actually take that extra step, maybe we could actually be a little bit smarter about having the type of framework that we would be able to prevent other victims from. But some of it just goes away, and we never talk about it.
Yeah.
Of the people who are reporting it, John, are you seeing, when it comes to pig butchering specifically, and actually also romance scams, who is being targeted in your experience? Is it mostly men, women, what age range, businesses? What are you seeing?
Yeah. So for romance scams, I find that, again, it's anecdotal evidence, but most of the victims I've seen are women, typically either widowed or divorced, in as young as 50 and going right up to 80, 90, as old as folks can get. I spoke to a woman who Clearly, based on her voice, she was probably in her 80s. She was absolutely convinced that she was dating Garth Brooks. And I asked her, well, how many times have you, met up with Garth Brooks? Well, we have more of a long distance thing, but, he calls me every night. I spoke to him just last night. Now, what time did you speak to him? And she told me. So I did a quick Google search and found, well, that's interesting because, he was giving a concert right at that moment. And I forget what city he was in. But I said, she said, oh, well, he must have called me between sets. And so there's a certain, now in this woman's case, truly believe because of her age that,
Yeah.
that's kind of what was going
She
on.
didn't have clarity of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another case, a woman that I spoke to, we actually came across her because we were investigating some business email compromise, and we got our hands on a bunch of mailboxes that were being used by these BEC scammers. And in there, we found a couple of romance scams. So we reached out to them to see if we could somehow deprogram them. And this one woman turned out she was about my age. At the time, I was about 50, 51 years old, an attractive woman, nothing wrong with her at all. This was not a woman who should have had any trouble making friends. She had gotten divorced. And after about 3 years of being single, all of her friends said, hey, girl, you got to get back out there. She's like, well, where am I going to meet people? Well, go on dating site. And sadly, the very first person who reached out was a very handsome gentleman who sent, wearing a Rolex, he's got pictures of himself and, flying first class and, eating at nice restaurants. He's standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. And they strike up a conversation. Now, allegedly, he lived just a short ways away. Again, though, what they're looking for are the folks that are potentially going to be lonely. And that's going to be an older person who is either divorced or widowed. The dating sites in particular make it very easy to filter by all of these things. I also notice they tend to like to go after folks that are religious or at least spiritual, and I believe that for two reasons. Number one, I think they're looking for people that maybe are going to be a little more generous. They perceive that if somebody goes to church, they're going to do good deeds, etc. So maybe they're going to be more likely to give some money. But I think additionally, they've already found somebody who is capable of believing something despite having no direct physical evidence. And so that, again, it helps them sort of slide those little dials and narrow down their target space. So I've also seen for romance scams, certainly quite a few younger men will be targeted. There, the lure typically is, the young Eastern European woman is going to be the lure, if you will. At the end of the day, it's still a Nigerian teenager, sitting back in Nigeria doing all of this. However, they'll play whichever role they need to play.
Wow.
For the pig butchering, could be absolutely anybody. There, they are looking for somebody who's a little bit older because unless you had a trust fund,
right?
When
it's
you're
where the money is,
3 years old, you can't lose $1 million to one of these because you don't have $1 million. But yes, once you get to the point where, you have a 401k and you've maybe got a little bit of money socked aside, now you're kind of their prime target. And I don't think they care about, gender as much as they care about, do you
money,
have assets? Are you of an age and what's your zip code, right? If you live in a wealthy zip code, you're probably going to get targeted a little more than if you live in a zip code maybe that has a lower average income.
So then you combine pig butchering with romance scamming, and people are just doubly scammed. Their heart is taken, their finances are taken, they're totally confused by all of this crypto talk that they don't get. They start to stop trusting themselves, stop trusting other people. And it's really sad. John, thank you so much. Where can people find more information about you or get a hold of you for your services?
Sure, absolutely. So you can reach me on the X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. My handle is JMW Secure. So JMW Secure. You can also reach me by just sending an email to info@Fortra, Fortra.com, and just mention my name and they'll track me down.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pig butchering scams are exploding, blending romance, emotional grooming, and fraudulent investment traps. This isn't just fraud. It's romantic exploitation with global criminal networks behind it. It's a strategy. Criminals plan it. Victims don't cause it. And the more we understand the playbook, the harder it becomes for predators to win. Stay alert, stay empowered. This is RomConned, where love and true crime collide.